I listened to JPEGMAFIA's I Lay Down My Life For You, so you don't have to. I first became aware of this album coming out about less than a week ago when it was announced on Twitter, and this was actually pretty surprising to me considering he just dropped an album last year, and this album was extremely highly praised, so I was expecting there to be more time in between rollouts. Typically, when an artist tends to drop so frequently, they have a pretty strong drop-off in quality, but I'm really happy to say that with this album, that is completely not the case. So the album is over 40 minutes and 14 songs, and it really uses this time effectively. There are some longer tracks on here, but I don't feel like any of them overstay their welcome. Every time a track is longer, it almost feels more like there's 2 or 3 combined into one with how many beat switches there are. You wouldn't expect any less, but it's an extremely experimental album from the production side. It's a really interesting mix of genres. You have some more R&B jazzy type inspired tracks, but you also have the strong metal guitars and hip hop. But I have to say that it's some of these more R&B driven tracks that end up becoming some of my favorites, because throughout the track list, Peggy actually uses these songs very strategically in a way to kind of break up the rhythm, and it's so extremely tastefully done. It seems like every time I'm starting to get used to a vibe, he hits you with one of these tracks. For example, probably my favorite song off the whole album is Either On or Off Drugs. It's just a really beautiful track, and I was definitely not expecting it when it hit. And what's really cool about it is it builds up with these strings into just this awesome grand moment. But I also wanted to shout out I'll Be Right There, because this is the first time in the track list that Peggy really wants to show you that it's not going to be the same ride throughout. But it's not only these low-key moments in the album that are really strong, you also have some great bangers. For example, A New Black History with Vince Staples is one of my highlights off the project. Both of their flows and styles just mend together in a really awesome way to listen to. It's also one of my favorite beats off of the project, but the ending of the track is also extremely interesting. I also really enjoyed Ex-Military. I thought there were some really great flows on here. And to me, this is one of the coolest tracks off the album, the way it just continues to evolve. This song for sure felt like you couldn't predict where it was going to go next. And I really enjoy listening to music like this. I love when I can't predict what the next bar is going to sound like. It makes for an overall more interesting album experience, and by the time you finish a song, it's almost like you have to listen to it again just to remember what's going on. For somebody that has more mainstream taste, maybe this could be a little overwhelming, but for me, this is just something that'll keep me coming back to an album. One track I didn't really vibe too much with was Jihad Joe. There was nothing necessarily wrong with it, I just felt like compared to some of the other tracks, this one stood out the least. I also loved hearing Denzel and JPEG on a track together. I love Denzel's music and energy so much, and especially on this track, he does a really great job. But the one gripe I have with not only this song, but a lot of the album is some of the vocal mixing. Specifically Denzel, I can tell that what he's doing is really good, but the mixing on it is so poor that it kind of takes away the punch. But I think that this could be completely something that's just a me thing. I also felt this way about Peggy's vocals throughout the album. The vocal change just seems to be a little too raw. To me, it kind of sounds like when you stumble across a SoundCloud rapper and their ideas are so good, but their mixing is all over the place. All over the place is definitely a stretch, but I feel like if they had a really tight mix on these tracks, I would just like them more. But of course, he has a very raw sound, so I don't expect them to take away grit from some of that distortion. I just like things to sound more tight and crisp. But it's very clear to me at this point that Peggy is a very experienced musician, especially with the closer track I recovered from this. Before we reach the ending, I was really curious to see how he closes it, and I think he did a perfect job. Even though the album's pacing didn't seem to slow down, he found a really good way to just tie the end of it. It felt super reflective, but also not too slow, and it was just the perfect way to close things off. After seeing all the high praise online, I'm really glad that I gave this album a shot, because not only are there so many interesting ideas here, but they're also executed greatly. It definitely sounded like Peggy is 100% sure of what kind of artist he is, and he doesn't want to be weighed down by any genre or sound limits, and so I think that this album really worked out. But let me know your thoughts. Most of the people that get recommended these videos aren't subscribed to the channel, so if you enjoyed this, hit that button, and yeah, peace out.